content creator Kimberly Leadership International. I am dedicated to empowering entrepreneurs by sharing tools, tips, and resources that are the formula for your abundance and success on my show, Abundance Blueprint with Kimberly.
Hello and welcome to the show, The Abundance Blueprint with Kimberly. I'm Kimberly Lane Roberts, your host and content creator. And on the show, we share the beliefs and methodologies of smart, driven men and women as far as how they got to their success and their abundance in their life. Today, we have a fantastic show. I've been waiting for this all week. You are in the right spot if you want to join me and listen in on the conversation I'm going to be having with 7-time CEO, founder, and now author of How to Scale Faster, Pete Martin. So before we introduce Pete and bring him up from the green room, I am going to share how you can get a hold of his book, How to Scale Faster. You can find that there. The paperback is available at that site, and you can also find the hard copy at Amazon. His book is interesting enough in that it is not about those great companies such as Amazon and the Googles and the Microsofts of the world, but it's a deep dive into the fastest growing companies within the prestigious Inc. 5000 and who were not VC backed, ideally, and did not sell their soul or give up their equity. And in Pete's terms, he calls them boot scale. So Pete will tell us more about that. So stay tuned. If you want to hear more about Pete, I am really featuring him this next 2 months. Join my peer group. One, you'll get a free copy of his book at our December meeting. And secondly, he is going to be our featured guest speaker in January. So feel free to reach out at klane@performanceinternational.com, or you can find my contact information on my website. So without further ado, let's introduce Pete. Okay. He was from sales at IBM to executive management at SAP, then to building 6 of his own companies with the last previous firm he sold to the global auditing giant KPMG. Now he's CEO of Ask My Board and author of the newly released How to Scale Faster, Meet Pete Martin. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Kimberly. Hey, everybody. How are you doing today? Welcome to beautiful Cleveland, Ohio, where it's 72 degrees in November. It's really bizarre.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're guaranteed to get snow, I'm sure, before the end of November, I would think. I know when I was living there, you got snow anywhere from October 1st to April 30th. So yeah, so you can keep it there. So, all right. Well, as I ask every guest on this show, what does abundance mean to you?
Yeah, I think abundance means to me the depth and the number of relationships you have. I think that I don't care what you're doing in life, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a physician, and it really doesn't matter. I think that we always hear that on your deathbed you don't say, "Geez, I wish I worked too much." Right? It's all about the relationships, and I think that particularly with the CEOs and the folks that you service, Kimberly, I think that nobody can do this alone. They have to have advisors around them, a great leadership team, good partners, good clients, right? And so it's all about the relationships. And so to me, abundance is the quality and the depth and the number of relationships that you have. And I think that I know folks that have 50,000 friends on Facebook, but they don't have any really good deep friends, right? Where they can truly go deep and share personal stuff, personal challenges, right? And successes. And so that's what abundance means to me, is just that quality of relationships that you have in your life.
I totally agree with you. I think we are all social human beings. We are not meant to be alone. And that's why so many of us suffered during COVID who were isolated. And obviously I can get in my whole soapbox about technology in that I think technology is wonderful. It's giving us opportunities to do things like we're doing right now and today and to speak to people in other countries. But we have to keep that relationship piece of it to balance it out so that we also maintain our health and wellness. Okay. Getting into your book, and I'll be honest, I did not read all of it yet, but I'm fascinated by it. I've gotten halfway through. You cover 5 topics for scaling, okay? And the first 3 you address in your book are team, and then one of those chapters I'm going to pull out culture, customers, I'm going to pull out marketing, and then capital, I want you to talk about protect. So can you just elaborate a little bit on all 3 of those? I know you interviewed many, like 354 different companies. And so Were there any consistent themes that you saw in any one of those categories or all?
Yeah, just I'm going to give a little bit of context to the book. So I studied the companies in the Inc. 5000 over a 7-year period. There was over 32,000 unique companies, and I filtered them by companies that doubled revenues every year for at least 4 of those 7 years consecutively. That took the number down to 386, and then I eliminated the ones that did that by raising external capital.
Mm.
The final number was 324. So these insights and these real quick lessons come from these 324 companies. All right. So one of the first ones, and the reason I started with team is kind of like what we just talked about, that no CEO can do this on their own. And so it is about the team that they built. And these people, these companies, and these founders did an extraordinary job of attracting the best and the brightest. And how they did that was they were able to really take a look at their culture of their company and be able to talk about it in very, very visual terms about what the culture of the company was like. And so if you're a top performer, you're into the mission or the domain of that particular company, and you look at their competitor, it wasn't even close in terms of how these companies describe their culture in very, very rich detail. When we get into deeper presentations and in the book, I have examples of how, if you went onto the jobs and career portion of these companies, how they describe their culture in this really rich detail. And then I compare them to their direct competitors. And so it's like from, if you are this person and you want to be with this kind of culture and, and you think this way and you operate this way, whatever. And then you get on their competitor's website and it's like, yeah, if you're looking for a value added experience for your skills, come here for us. Right. And so the differences were so stark. And so that being able to understand what your culture's about, what the values in your culture were, marry those two things together, and then describe it in really rich detail, that was a huge factor in these companies' abilities to attract the best and the brightest.
Yeah, and that culture piece, I found it interesting. Is like you started first there, right? And in order to attract the right talent, they specifically have to know what their culture is and be able to describe it in full-on detail, emotional, compelling detail, right? So I thought that was pretty powerful, hence why you brought it up. So what would you say about from a marketing perspective for customers perspective, for attracting customers?
Yeah, so we're all inundated with marketing messages right now, right? And so because of that, we all ignore most of them. And so what I've seen from all of these companies is they initially struggled with to figure out the best way to do customer acquisition. Just consider it like typical lead generation, right? And I'm a sales and marketing guy by background, and I've been telling everybody for decades now in my own businesses about, you need to do a little bit of each marketing channel and do it all really well, and then kind of integrate it all. And so be everywhere the prospect is. And what was really surprising is these companies did exactly the opposite. So clearly I've been an idiot for the last couple of decades. Because what they did was they picked one growth channel and they mastered it. And I'll tell you, 5 of the 324 companies, their way to go to market was cold calling. And so people say cold calling doesn't work. I can give you a bunch of examples of companies that are over 100 million in revenue, that's the way they go to market. And so I think that the core essence of this part of the chapter of the book was any one of those channels can work. And so I talk about 37 different ways to acquire customers. Any one of them can work, but they won't work if you try a little bit of each one. You can't be an expert and a master at each one, right? So pick the one that fits the company culturally, that is different from what the competitors are doing. If you're competing against a big company and they're spending whatever, pick your number, $50 million in search engine optimization, organic search, it doesn't make sense for you to do that. You're never going to compete against them, right? So, so these companies did, and they, by the way, most of the stuff that came out of this in terms of the lessons and the insights and frameworks wasn't necessarily what they had consciously thought. They didn't say specifically, let's go pick one channel. Right. It just turned out that the other channels were not working and the one was. And so then they figured that out. They eliminated all of the, the noise of the other ones and really focused and honed in on that one that worked for them.
Yeah. Like when I'm coaching my clients, especially in business development, it's like, where have you been getting your leads to begin with, right? So instead of trying to do everything, and social media included, if you've gotten them from social media, keep doing that. If you got them from referrals, keep doing that. If you got them from cold calling, keep doing that. But I know a lot of people think cold calling is dead. So I definitely encourage everybody to read that chapter, and I'll be rereading that one as well. So yeah, thank you for that. Now, what about when I'm interviewing clients or potential candidates for my group, and living here in pretty much Silicon Valley here in north of San Francisco, I see a lot of companies that are looking for funding, right? And I see a lot of VC companies and just that whole scene. And so I'm interested to see why did they not go with a VC? Or I think some of them tried and got denied, and others just didn't think they were going to make it. But why do you think the success was so big for them being bootstrapped?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on this. I think there were essentially two categories of folks that were trying to scale their business. The ones were, well, many of them didn't think it was even an option, and so they just kind of figured out how to be profitable and cash flow positive, and then just got better and better and better at that. Then there was a bunch of other people that tried to raise money. I have a story about a lady that runs Farm Grow Flowers, and she tried 110 times. She got 110 no's, right? And so she didn't have an option. And so there were lots of folks that, tried, started, and figured it out. But ultimately, all of them leaned into this bootstrapping philosophy. They created what I call a cash awareness culture. So, when you were interviewing for the company, they would say things like, look, I just want to tell you, we don't have this big bank account from this VC or PE. There's two things that causes. One is you're not going to get the ping pong tables and the foosball tables and the free lunches and the free breakfasts and benefits out the wazoo. But what we get is we control our destiny, right? We don't have outsiders telling us how to run the business. We make decisions for clients and employees, and that's it, right? And so they all lean into this bootstrapping mindset, and it just reinforced the cultures that they were trying to create. Okay. And the other thing I talk a lot about in the book is this notion of pricing authority, meaning when I started to dig into all of the other facets of these companies, they all figured out a way to distinguish themselves in their markets. They were all in, almost every industry is so competitive. Everything gets commoditized over time, right? When companies start to make a lot of money, others come in, it gets commoditized. So all these companies did a phenomenal job of figuring out a way to be different, right? Not better, different. And because they were different, they could charge different prices than the industry average. And if you look at the number one factor of to increase operating cash flow, it's your price. So if you raise your price by 1% or $1, it falls right down to the bottom line from both a profit and a cash flow perspective. And so because they all had pricing authority, premium pricing, you can think of it that way, they were able to always be cash flow positive, and they didn't have the need then as they scaled to go get external capital and to sell their equity. And so that was a key factor in all of this.
So you're saying they did charge that extra dollar, or you say to price themselves a little higher than their competition? Could we reframe that again? Just make sure I got that right.
I'll give you another example of I'll use the same Farm Grow Flowers. So female-led company. She was raised in Indiana, and she had a flower shop in San Francisco for a while, and it was doing okay. It just was struggling, and whatever, just wasn't doing great. So she decided to get into floral e-commerce, right? So you're going up against 1-800-Flowers, you're going up against these behemoths. So she had to be different, not better, right? So what she decided to do was she knew that she could curate flowers really, really well and create this out-of-box, this unboxing experience that was better than anything that was out there. And so when she started selling flowers online, you didn't get to pick what you wanted. She curated those flowers for you, and they wrapped them in a burlap bag and this, in this beautiful box with this ceramic pin, just amazing. And so, their average selling price was $120, $150. The average in the industry is 50 or 60, right? So by being different, they could really elevate where they were at from a market position perspective. And that was a huge factor in them scaling to over 100 million in revenue in less than 5 years.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Without external capital.
Yeah, that's huge, 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 huge. What would you say you learned, or what did you learn in this process that you did not expect to learn? Now, you went in there thinking about, oh, I'm going to learn all this stuff about scaling, but what was an aha or surprise? It could be about the people. It could be about,
so many things. There's like 20 things that literally rocked my business world about things that I had known or thought I knew, or it was common business advice that turned out not to be true. I think the thing that surprised me the most was, if you look at the success of these founders and entrepreneurs, and you've got to really kind of get in your head what these folks have done. So they more than doubled. The median year-over-year growth rate was 169% for at least 4 years. So you go from 20 to 40 to 80 to 160, right? Think about that concept, right? In millions in revenue. And so, so I expected these to be very tenured, sophisticated, well-educated entrepreneurs and founders, right? The majority of the founders, they were first-time founders.
Oh, wow.
None of them were from a prestige college. Not all of them even had a college degree. On and on and on. So the way that I describe the founders is that they are extraordinarily ordinary. There was nothing exceptional about them as a person, demographically, socially, whatever. But they've all kind of figured this crazy business journey and business growth journey out. And so that was probably the biggest aha for me, in addition to a bunch of other things. It's just that, and the thing that was really refreshing for me and really compelling from that perspective is any CEO can do this, right? A lot of people look at that and say, there's no way I can grow from 5 million to 150 million in, half a decade. And there's lots of examples of people that did that again, they were not extraordinary. I hate to say that, but they created extraordinary success, but they weren't exceptionally extraordinary, right? So,
yeah, they weren't captain of the football team or captain of the cheerleader team. Or I always make the saying, I'm so glad I did not peak in high school, because you look at all the great people, they didn't peak in high school. They're still going, right? So I'm still waiting to peak, right? So I'm going to ask this question because I think it's because I have a theory around this, and you probably might or might not have had gotten into kind of a personal side of them and to see and understand their personal life. But I believe to an extent, a lot of us are achieving our success because we are running from something. Oh, dad said you're not going to amount to anything. Mom thought da 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 da. Your school teacher said, you're stupid. Blah 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 blah. So many people, I'm generalizing, I think, are driven by that to prove something, right? And so what I really focus on in my coaching is what is your mindset for your drive? And if it is that, then let's reverse it. So you're running towards something joyful, abundance, giving back, a legacy, mankind, humanity, right? And flipping the switch, because when you're running from fear, that bucket never gets full. There's not enough money, enough cars, enough houses, enough wives, enough husbands, whatever, right? So did you get any insight to that when you were having these discussions? I'm curious.
There is a whole chapter on it, and what I call is leaning into your chip. So as I started interviewing the CEOs, we had a list of 280 some questions across all the different functional areas. And with the CEOs, we got into a lot of personal stuff. But after about, I don't know, half a dozen interviews, I kept hearing this recurring theme, which is exactly what you just hit on, which was, I had to prove this to my parents. There's lots of these stories. And so I called it leaning into the chip on their shoulder, right? And I think that society tells people to go remove the chip, go to therapy, get rid of the chip, right? And what all of these folks did is they leaned into the chip and they used it to drive them and keep that, right? We know starting, scaling, growing a company is really hard, and there's 1,000 potholes you gotta traverse, right? And so the folks that did this successfully, they did that because they had this internal drive, and that internal drive came from this chip. One of the guys I interviewed, it's out near you, on Santa Monica, is his parents were all either MDs or PhDs, all of them, and uncles and aunts and whatever. And he started a business in college selling T-shirts, or I forget what, yeah, selling T-shirts. And it was like, look, Dad, I got this successful business, and it was like no attention, right? Then he starts this company, and this company is over 100 million in revenue. He's got this huge cabin up in Bear Mountain. He's got this amazing cars, right? Amazing house. He's like, Dad, look, and no appreciation, no attention, whatever, because he wasn't an MD or a PhD. And, and he gave me permission to tell the story, right? And he's still going through therapy for it. And so, and there was lots and lots and lots of stories like that, and so it's an interesting question about, are they abundantly rich? I think that, I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is they definitely were, they were working with this chip on their shoulder. They were aware of it. They acknowledged it. They used it to drive them, right? And another interesting thing was, so the research took me almost 3 years to put together. And by the time I was kind of going back around, sending out the final manuscript, 5 of the CEOs that I'd interviewed had stepped aside and brought somebody else in.
Oh, wow.
Really, and this was one of them. And he ended up designating an internal guy. Most of them designated someone internal. 2 of them got somebody from the outside. But they all got to this point where they said, and it wasn't that they were tired and exhausted. They just said, this thing has grown beyond either my skill sets or my desire to go run. I'm an entrepreneur. I like the creative thing. We're now a $150 million, $200 million company. And it's management, right? It's not entrepreneurial stuff. It's not fun anymore to me. And that was extraordinary to me too. Again, these extraordinarily ordinary people, to have that self-awareness, right? To say, not me anymore, and to give over the reins to somebody else, I thought was really incredible. So
yeah, especially because they put their blood, sweat, tears, ego, whatever, pain, passion, drive, all into that. I think it would be hard to give that up, but I think they probably came to a peaceful moment, and the fire wasn't there anymore because they've grown so big, it's gotten so big, it's no longer this little engine that they were pushing uphill. But thank you so much, Pete, for all the wonderful, wonderful insights you've shared with us. Any last comments you want to leave? And again, everybody, scale up faster. The hard copy is not available yet, is it?
Yes and no. So they printed off, I think, a couple thousand copies, and it got sold out before it even went online. And so if you go on Amazon, it'll say sold out. So we're actually doing another print run right now. So as soon as that's done, it'll be available. But if they go to the website, they can get notified for the pre-sale, both either paperback or hardcover, whatever they want. And so when the print runs back out into distribution, then we'll send it out to them. So
perfect. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave with the group?
No, I think that kind of what I said. Anybody can do this. You just you don't have to do this alone. Using folks like you to help facilitate that, and Vistage as an organization. And then, the book and other books, Scaling Up, and other ones like it. There's a formula, there's a framework. So you don't have to go figure this out on your own, right? And that's why I did this research, is you shouldn't have to go down this journey without, by yourself. Like, here's a bunch of stuff here. And there's some very high level strategic framework stuff, and there's some very tactical stuff. And I've got a mix of both in there. So don't have to do it alone. Somebody else has gone before you. Just go learn from them.
Yep. And I'll also leave your contact information in the show notes, and again, in addition to a link to your book. So I'm going to drop you down to the green room, have a mocktail, cocktail, whatever you wish to have, and I'll talk to you in a few minutes. Okay. Oh, perfect. He's already on it. All right. Excellent. All right. Bye for now. All right. So if you want to learn more about my peer advisory group, and again, if you join now, you'll get to attend our December meeting where you get a free copy of Pete's book. You won't have to wait for the pre-order. I've got some in my possession already. And you get to actually see and meet with Pete at our January meeting. He will be our guest speaker. So you can see us, the Abundance Blueprint, every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and also noon Eastern time. I can do my math here. And we will say bye for now. Thanks for joining us.
You can learn more about my services and products at performanceleadershipinternational.com. Make sure to join me every week for a new episode on the Superstar Entrepreneurs YouTube channel.